Hi, it's Tin at Kayon here. We're at the back of the Prado, and because we don't have enough options to mount your aerial on the Prado, we've come up with another one. This is the Rear Hinge Aerial Mount, and we're going to install this today. So why would you want to choose this aerial mounting option over the other ones we do, like the bonnet or the rear wheel ones? Now, if you want to run the aerials on the back, you don't want them on the bull bar, this is a really good option. You can run a small stubby UHF aerial, or you could even do the 600mm fiberglass ones, or maybe even a longer whip style one, nothing too heavy. The other nice thing about this is you can retain the spare wheel cover. It doesn't sort of get in the way of the spare wheel cover, and it gives you another option if you've already got the rear wheel aerial mounts, if you're running lights on them or something like that. So let's get started and get this installed. So to complete this install, you need a couple of tools. You'll need a really good 12mm ring spanner and a 10mm socket. Now, just to explain how we're going to do this, we're going to actually move the brake light, uninstall the brake light a little, so we have access to these top two hinge bolts on top of the hinge, and that's where we're going to attach the aerial mount. So first thing to do, we'll get rid of these, we'll remove these 10mm bolts that hold the brake light in. So that's with the 10mm socket. Now you want to completely remove these, and what we'll do is just shift the light to give us a little bit more room to access the hinge bolts. Once you have those two bolts removed, we just want to push on the light gently, and it should just unclip and move away. That's about enough. So we've got about 10-20mm there, and that gives me enough room to access those two 12mm bolts. Grab your 12mm ring spanner, and we're going to remove this top bolt and then loosen off this inner top bolt. Now these are really tight from the factory, so make sure you get a good purchase on them. And be careful not to round off the heads. So I'll just take this first one out. This one you want to remove completely. I'll remove that completely. And then the one behind it, we're going to back that out so we have about a 3mm gap, and that's where we're going to slide the bracket in under. Now once you loosen that off, this hinge is actually only being held in by the bottom two. So just do that nice and gently and carefully, and don't hang off the door or anything while you're doing it. And you can see why we've moved the light now. That's so that we have some access, so we can put this ring spanner there. There's just enough room there. So I'm loosening this off. Now that we've got the hinge prepped to attach the bracket, we need to have a think about how we're going to run the coax and the aerial cable back. Now this vehicle, I've run the cable back behind the brake light. It's a little bit tricky because you actually have to remove the whole brake light. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to run it down and back through into the cabin through this grommet here. That's a lot easier to do. The other thing I've found is it's easier to attach the aerial to the bracket first before we actually install the bracket on the vehicle. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Once you've got the aerial on, it's easier to do the cable management now because this bracket sits in between the gap between the light and the door. A bit fiddly, so I'm going to cable tie this cable to the bracket before we install it. And we want to have the cable sort of sitting on the edge of the bracket too, so that it doesn't get squashed between the door and the light. Now we have the aerial mounted to the bracket, cable tied away, clipped away. We're going to position the bracket on the vehicle, so you sort of want to move it this way. Now just be careful where the cable goes, and this is the right position for this cable. Now with the slot there, just slide it underneath that bolt head. Grab your 12mm socket and tighten that up. I'll just move this cable out of the way so I can get this ring spanner on there. It's That's nice. Okay. Now we want to nip this up and position it correctly. So I'm going to tighten this up, but not all the way. I want to be able to rotate the bracket a little so I can just check the position of the bracket because the brake light's not in the right position yet. So that's nipped up there and I can still rotate it a bit. What I'm going to do now is I think it's going to be about there. I'm going to push this brake light back into position to go in from the outside. Push this light back into position. Looking good. And just going to check that the gap between this bracket and the light is even and small. Okay, I'm going to tighten that bolt up because the bracket's in the correct position. Now when you tighten it, just make sure the bracket's not moving. And it's easier to tighten it now before you put the other bolt in. That one's good, and now I'll put the other bolt in. And we want to tighten that one up as well. Next thing to do is to put the light back in position, but before we do that, just make sure the coax is running where you want it to run. And that looks good there, not hitting anything. I'll put this light back in. Okay, it's good. And we reinstall these two bolts that hold the brake light in. Now once this light's back in position, just do a double check that the gaps are all good. Hopefully they are, because I don't want to take it apart again. Nice. Now once that's there, we're going to close the door up. We want to check the gap here. I'll just close that properly. Okay, so it's clear of the steel work on the door. Looks good. Everything looks good. And we're happy with that. There you go.